Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here with Abby Wills. And this is a little unique, Abby, than our usual interview format. What we're going to do is we're going to create this scenario where it's just like you and I having a cup of tea and people are listening in because we haven't connected for years. It's been years since we saw each other. Right, your cup of tea. Um, we haven't talked since the National Kids Yoga Conference back 7, 8 years ago or something. I don't know, a long time ago. And I just saw that you're starting a whole new project. And what I love about your work, you have this very strong foundation from Shanti Generation, which is when I knew you, right? You were offering services and yoga tools and mindfulness to youth. And that's how I always thought of you. And over the years, people would ask, who can we go to for tweens and teens? Because I'm trained and experienced with young people, so little ones. And then we've over the time have created more resources for older as my daughter grew older and I was more in it, right? But you're always my go-to when I come to working with youth at Shanti Generation. But over that time, I've sort of seen snippets of your work, Abby, that you've kind of taken on different projects, which is amazing. And when I saw this new one called Heartful of Peace, I thought, okay, this is a perfect time to get together on your journey, what you've been up to since we saw each other, and all about Heartful of Peace. So to kind of dive in, where's your journey brought you in the last few years, so to speak?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and it's so good to see you again. I miss being in community with other kids and teens yoga people. That's something that's fallen off, I feel like, since COVID. So it's nice
Right.
to be in connection. Yeah, the past several years, I've continued to work with schools. I have a couple of high schools that I continue to work with the students and the educators. And the past few years, I've been really focused on working with educators in the state of California community college system through a project called
Mm.
Puente. Puente is housed in the UC Berkeley um, world, and it's been around for over 40 years. So with them, I get to work with academic counselors at community colleges who
Wow.
intake high schoolers and then help them navigate into the UC system. So it's really so satisfying, and I learned so much. But it's really supporting those who are supporting youth with
Yeah.
wellness, yoga, meditation, and then I've also been actively working with the Child Abuse Prevention Council of Ventura County, working with the foster, or what we now call kinship care um,
Mm.
world. So it's a lot of social workers, parents, judges, officers who again, helping to support those who are supporting youth. And in
Yeah.
this case, youth who are really facing a lot of challenges. So I feel like my work has really grown from working directly with youth to working with the people that work with them. But I'll always keep going into the classroom because
Yes.
um, things are changing so fast for young people that if we're not really face to face with them, it can be easy to think that, I don't know, the old tools still work, but I find
Mm.
myself constantly needing to retool to face the challenges that youth are inundated with, which are so different than what you and I dealt with as adults.
Yeah. Well, this makes so much sense because you're had that such strong foundation. And so you always, I'm sure, the back of your mind, were seeing how the grown-ups were struggling, working, especially with the tweens as well, right? That you saw a need there that you could offer your services to help folks working with teens be self-regulated themselves so they could co-regulate so that they could look after their own health and wellness, right? And I know I can speak for myself, Abby. I mean, I was just saying to you, I'm sorry we haven't been in touch. It's so great because I've been, as people in my community know, I've been down a bit of a rabbit hole too for several years with my daughter is she was not what I could ever have imagined, right? As a parent, I didn't feel equipped, even with an education background, and I really wanted to be a mom, but you don't always know how the universe is going to deliver you a little spirit, right? She chose me, and now she's 13, and we're having a great time together, but it's been a rocky road, and so I can imagine for you working with people like myself as educators and parents, giving us the tools. And it isn't about, like, Abby, back in the day, I read every single parenting book there was, right? Because that's my like teacher head, right? Like read and learn strategies. But really, the thing that made the biggest difference was to get back on my cushion in the mornings and sit silently every day for years, right? And that was the turning point, right? It wasn't just being on the mat for me, or not just, it wasn't just all the practices that we do, but it was the, no kidding, the fierce looking at, how do I find space to be gentle with myself, to come back to my own home, to tap into my own intuition, not listen to everyone else, not listen to all the other feedback, right? But to come home to myself. And I'm sure that's what you're finding, right? Working with the teachers, right? Is that kind of what you're seeing? Is that
Yeah.
there's just so much on our plates.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing that, and I'm glad you did find your way back to yourself. It's a huge part of it, is coming
Mhm.
back home to ourselves and trying to exist with all the noise and, like you said, all of the advice, that comes at us as parents. And oftentimes that advice is so conflicting that it's hard to know who to trust. But if we don't trust ourselves, then I think
Mhm.
everything kind of, there's a ripple effect to that. And when we do come home to ourselves, there's so much more stability and foundation. So it's that for sure. And I would say in equal measure, being in community, because so much of the
Mhm.
work that I'm doing with organizations is about connecting with other people who are experiencing similar but different challenges, and just recognizing that we're none of us are alone in these struggles. That
Yeah.
everybody is dealing with something, and oftentimes our lives just aren't set up to connect around the struggles, and also to connect around the joys and the successes that we can find in on these paths. So yeah, I find it's so much, it's this mirror. It's like the personal
Yeah.
practice and the collective care. When those two things come together, that's when I feel strong, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too, Abby, is, speaking to you now, I feel like we've been best friends forever. Like we have, I feel this connection with you, and we didn't even know each other that well before. We just sort of met each other at the Kids Yoga Conference. But what the thing that stuck out for me, Abby, all these years, is that I always had this feeling of, you have such a beautiful way of being graceful in the work, but also really stoic. You're very passionate on what you do, and there's a clarity. And so I love this work for you. It's like a perfect fit. I don't think personally I would have the, I don't know. I'm a lot more sensitive than you, Abby, and I don't know that I have the backbone. But when I see you communicate, you speak your truth, and you're really strong. To your point, the strength is deep, and you share so much love for the work, for the people, and for the work. So I can imagine for you, and for those of you listening, thinking about, wow, look at Abby's journey, right? And that may or may not be the fit for you. You might think, oh my goodness, I want to do more of what she's doing, or acknowledging that there are people like Abby in the world that are creating these spaces that, wow, what a gift. Do you know what I mean? There's a certain person I think that could hold space for educators and parents, and I think I'm just so proud of you, and I'm so grateful for the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And I mean, likewise, you're right. I feel like we've known each other. I feel like we've been on this path because, back in the day, there weren't so many, I mean, kids yoga was a new thing. There are some
Right.
folks that sort of, walked the path a little bit before us, but then this beautiful community of people all over the states and beyond really dug in and said, okay, what can we do as individuals? How can we connect? And I
Mhm.
think it really worked, and now you see kids yoga is everywhere.
Yeah.
I actually did a deep dive, as they say, when Heartful of Peace started, and I can talk a little bit more about that, to see where's kids yoga right now, because I've been a little bit more focused in the adult world of wellness. And I am amazed. I am amazed to see how many programs have succeeded, how many have new ones have come up, just how much interest there is. Even on YouTube, if you look at,
Mm,
so many of the educators and musicians who are just really out there doing this. And you're one of them. I would just say to your
mm,
point around finding our way, though, is for
yeah.
me with this work, it's always been about listening to my heart
Oh
and
my gosh. So
and
I can
really,
so see
really
that.
just really, really
Yeah.
like trying to be clear on what I'd like to do and then just letting it in because all of these organizations that I've listed, they all found me. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I am a big believer in listen to your heart, keep walking in the direction that you need to be and those who need you will show up or those who you
Mm.
need will also show up,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that brings to mind, like I had an interview with Shawnee from Autisms for Autisms, and then Shari in New York, right? And Karma Kids Yoga. And those of you who've been around, and even Lonnie, who've been around for so long, that all of you, you're right, have this backdrop of being really clear on your love and your passion and just taking one step forward at a time. Right. And I think for those listening who are new to having our kids yoga teacher business or kids yoga business, I think that's the real takeaway is really, not to try to be like someone else, right? Like
Yeah.
I will never be Abby and you will never be me, right? That our work is different, but yet we're partners on this journey together. And so we know we can reach out and support each other across the way, but we have different ways in which we show up in the world. And I
Yeah.
think that's a really beautiful thing. I think there's a lot to be said why there's a few of us who are still in this work after all these years is that our heart and our soul bust through any obstacles, right? And then
Yeah.
you see, I'm picture myself in your shoes and thinking about you're going to work with these college students and you're going to work with these schools, like what that must feel like every day. I mean, it must be both heartbreaking and rewarding at the same time.
You said it. I mean, it is. It really is. And I feel like for me, this work is so much a part of my own healing. When
Mm,
I have taken, sort of breaks when my own kids have really needed my full attention. You know what I mean? Where I've taken like, okay, I'm going to really be conscious next semester and how much work I take on. And I find that if I'm not able to engage with other people and be in these institutions of learning and like that's where I feel really alive. And so I know that it's all about finding that balance, right? But
yeah.
it is heartbreaking to see what folks are dealing with. And it's also really, really rewarding to witness and experience how much people how much people appreciate the opportunity
Mm,
to pause, to take a breath, to connect with each other. It's for
mm,
me, this work has gotten so simple. We don't need
right?
yoga mats. We don't need props. Like we just
Right.
need some space and time
Oh my
and just
gosh, I love
ask
that.
ask a good question and let people fill in the blanks. And then people
Oh my gosh, I
feel
love
like
that.
their cups get filled up. And yeah, I mean, I think just overall what I've seen is that, the institutions of education, especially the higher up you go, just becomes so rigid and full, and there's not a lot of space for humanity. It's all about the
Yeah.
content and the progress. And so people really appreciate the opportunity to pause. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, I love that. I love that you're said. I want to highlight that. The work has become so simple. And you've been doing this, what, 20, 30 years or something? I mean, it's been a long time, right? So the work has become so simple. I wish that message. I mean, our school yoga program, we just had a coaching call last Friday, and we were talking about they went to breakout rooms and came after. I said, what were some of your takeaways? And that's what they said. They actually said, keep it simple. Like we're making things too complicated because that's how our brains are wired these days, right? We have so much noise coming at us all the time, and we're trying to just be in life, as you say, it's just become so complex. And the simplicity of the time and space to be heard, right? And to connect and to feel loved and a sense of
Yeah,
belonging. That's really, and as you say, asking the good question. One question could change the trajectory of a youth or a person's life, right?
it's true. I mean, I'm a big believer in inquiry-based learning for that reason.
Yeah.
I think we can probably all think back and find some question someone asked us that provoked, a whole new dimension of
Yes.
curiosity and wonderings and more questions. Yeah, that's the thing is I love to enter spaces where with questions as opposed to like, oh, I have all the answers because I don't, because everything's always changing. And luckily we have these ancient practices that do just remain, they continue to support us. Like you said, you
Yeah.
can always go back to your cushion. You can do that same practice you learned 30 years ago, and it's still there for you. But when it
That's
comes to
right.
like working out in the world, things are changing so fast. I think it just requires so much bandwidth, you
Yes.
know? Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. What's coming up for me is I remember very vividly, speaking of the good question, I remember very vividly being in San Francisco and I was talking to someone and trying to find my way, right? Because my husband, he had his job and I had a baby at home, and someone said to me, "Well, what is it you really, really want to do?" And I said, "Well, publish my children's yoga books." And that was it. And they said, "And why don't you do that?" And I said, "Well, I can't make any money off it." And they said, "What?" Like they backed up and they're like, "What? There's lots of authors who can, make money from writing books." And then right, it was in that moment, right, that you're right, life changes. But if we don't ask each other these things, we'll never know, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I've been reading a lot about the changing of the times and the noise that we're going through and the intention merchants and anxiety generation, all these things with tech and everything. And I'm really curious how, if we were to look back on this interview or this chat, in a number of years, if how things might have changed. And I'm wondering if the inundation of tech and social media and everything. And I feel like people almost are starting to back away, right?
Mm,
And creating more of these spaces. So for folks in your programs where maybe they had 5-10 minutes with you and they had this space, I wonder if it becomes kind of like a craving,
mm.
and then I wonder if they're going to bring that practice into their home lives, right? Or they can start to talk to their family or friends about, wow, the best part of my day might have been just those few minutes with Abby, you know, that changed the way I thought. So I'm kind of curious. And um now looking at your Heartful of Peace, what a beautiful way to bring all of this work together, weaving together music, mindfulness, movement. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Well, this whole project was really, I mean, I know you'll know what I'm saying, but sometimes a
Yeah.
spark just hits you, right? And like
Yes.
a whole new story unfolds for you in like
Yes.
a kid's yoga story, right?
Yeah.
I just had this flash of inspiration that I wanted to encourage dear, dear friend of mine. I mean, we're like sisters,
Mm.
who's a
Oh.
musician. I love her music. And I just had this spark of like, you should do a kids album, a children's album,
Mm.
because you have like she just has the energy, the playfulness, and she has a deep, deep practice. Because I was thinking about how at that time and this has been several years now because it takes a long time to produce these things, but um several years ago, I was thinking about babies that were born during COVID. And they were born
Mm.
into this home-based world, and how it must feel for them to go like from the womb into this home where all they know is their family. Then they go out into this big world, and like how it must feel to be in a world that, and in many ways is like on fire, right? Like
Yeah.
the political, the geopolitical, the environmental, the financial. I mean, the world is so full of stress. And I just had this sense of like, that my girlfriend Rebecca Trujillo Vest, that she could make this music that was all about come
Mm.
from the intention of speaking in a heartful way to little ones, to let them know that amidst all of this madness, there are good people and there's love and we welcome you. And then it slowly became, the album sort of took the shape of, because I almost left out, she said she would do it as long as I wrote the lyrics.
Yes,
I've
right.
never written music before. So I was like, okay, if you're, I will meet you there. And
Oh
so
my gosh, I love it. That's what I love about you. This might to my point. Like you're just like, let's do this. I'll figure it out, right?
well, I thought, let's turn it into, the album is 8 songs. It starts with a welcome song and it ends with a goodbye song. And then it sort
Oh,
of tracks the rhythm of a yoga class in between. Right?
oh,
So there's like one that's about, it's that doesn't say sun salutations, but it's waking up the sun inside and it sort of guides you through those movements. And, you know, so that started to come together. And again, it was one of those things that just, I would go for a walk and write a song. And it just came through because it was the things I'll say in class, the thoughts that I have in class as a teacher, just bringing that out into like a lyrical place. And then Rebecca put it to music. And along that same timeline, I was collaborating with another group of educators on a resource for young kids, also from that same kind of acknowledgement that our young people
mm,
and the parents and educators of young people are just in constant need of more resources. There's so
yeah,
many resources out there, and I wanted to make a new fresh one, utilizing the
yeah.
technology of the Google Drive and having something that a teacher could just press play on. And so I collaborated with all these great educators, and we just set out to create a simple resource that would be mindfulness, yoga, and these questions that you and I were just talking about, right? Posing questions that create community, that create care for
Mm,
each other. And then at some point, I just saw, okay, we got this resource and we have this album, and they really could go together. And so I proposed that to everybody, and then it all just kind of merged together. And so now it's just this, it's a very simple resource. It's 8 pods, and each pod has a theme, and each pod has a song, a lyric video so that kids can sing along with the song,
mm,
yoga instruction, and then that mindful dialogue prompt. So it's very simple. It's not like a full
mm,
curriculum that someone needs a training for. It's just, it's kind of like a book. It's like one of the
yeah.
things you can use when you're working with young kids or for your kids at home.
Oh, that sounds incredible. That sounds incredible. And it's so different, honestly, when you see the website. The website's so inviting. It's adorable and bright, and but yet clean and crisp. But speaking to you about it, then I can feel your heart, you
Yeah.
know? That's amazing. So what's been sort of your feedback so far? What are the educators or the kiddos saying?
Well, I mean, we're just getting it out there. The album launched in the end of August. And so we had our first online, we're doing every couple of months a free orientation for any educators or parents that want to just get walked through the curriculum or the resource. And that was really fascinating because we happen to have several music educators who showed up. So
Mm,
I was expecting more like yoga, mindfulness involved folks, but it was great
yeah.
to have the music people. They had all kinds of great ideas of how they could implement the resource, some of them which we will add. One of the ideas we had from the beginning was we really intentionally chose Google Slides as the format because want it to be a living resource that we can add to over time. So someone had an
Yes.
idea, listening to one of the songs, that you could do a drawing activity. So
Yes.
we're gonna add that in, and we just want it to feel like a community project. It's interesting because so many people worked on this. Like if you look on the website or on the
Yes.
source,
Yeah.
you see so many people brought ourselves together to kind of conceptualize and create it. And then when you look at that your resource, you're like, oh, but it's so simple. But that's the thing, is simplicity isn't always easy to get to.
Exactly. Yes. And
Time.
for listeners, go to heartfulofpeace.org, heartfulofpeace.org, and you can see the whole list. I agree. Isn't that fascinating, right? That it takes all of those brains to come together to make something so simplistic. I love it. That's
It's true.
so
I do want to
encouraging.
give, if I can, a shout out to the designer because you mentioned how clean and bright. So the
Yeah.
designer is such an integral part of any project. And this one for sure, her name is Lynn Hardy, and she's got a company called Aju Basani. And she is a young Navajo
Mhm.
Diné woman. And so she brings her indigeneity into all of her design processes. And that
Oh
was
my
really, really integral to our process because she laid this grounded, just earthly, organic
God.
foundation
Mhm.
that you might not see it right away, but I'm hoping that especially young kids will feel it, just
Mhm.
feel the spaciousness and the natural elements that she brought into the project. Yeah, I just want to give her props because I feel like she really captured the heartful nature. And we say
Mhm.
heartful like mindful. So it's got one L, right?
Yes,
Not
right.
heartful.
Yes. Yes,
And
heartful of peace. Yes.
yeah, and so a lot of people are kind of, a lot of people know about the practice of heartfulness, but it's also new for a lot of people. Like we know
Yes.
mindfulness, and it's almost like in mindfulness, we're really working with the mind, and in heartfulness, we're really working with the heart, you
Yes, I
know?
love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone said to me recently about being like-minded. They're actually saying like-hearted. I would say that between us, like I feel a heart connection to your work and to you, right? That not just are we all like-minded. So how can people find out about Heartful of Peace besides going to your website and checking things up? How can they buy a copy? How can they get up on it? As you say, you're going to have every other month or so, you're going to have this gathering. So definitely check that out. But how else do they get this in their classrooms, in their homes, and their homeschool curriculums?
Yeah. Well, the website is the hub. From there, you can access the resource is free, which is so cool. Everybody can access it free. Um, It is, you can access it through the website, either through Google Slides, where you can go and make yourself a copy and you can, edit it out the way you want it. Maybe you find certain things that work for your kids and other things that don't. So you can make your own copy, or you can just access the one that's on in the drive. Or you can download the PDF from the website. So you can utilize it in that way. And you can sign up on the mailing list if you want to be informed on the orientations that we're doing. I mean, I'm kind of thinking of it as a community of practice, just a monthly community of practice. And the next one is November 24th. You can sign up
Wait,
via the
wait,
website.
but did I hear that correctly? You said it's free?
So yeah, the resource is totally free. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. We received a grant, a collaborative that I work with received a grant, and that's what we decided to do with the grant.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Okay, that's everything,
Yeah.
right? So there really is no barrier to getting this in every classroom everywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
Exactly.
age group is the youngers, right? So is this sort of
Yes.
preschool, early elementary?
We really had TK through second in mind.
Yeah.
However, we've heard some of the feedback we've gotten is, the adults find themselves listening to the music on their own. The
Yes,
music was all
absolutely.
created by also a different, like a whole nother collaborative of people with lots of professional musicians, worked at a beautiful studio. You mentioned Pink earlier. She recorded at the
Mm.
studio.
Right.
There's a
I
really
love it.
cool studio in Venice called Earth Star, and Rebecca, the singer songwriter, she has a band called Asmundo Music, and through her band, just all these wonderful musicians contributed to this. If you get a chance, like you can access the music through Spotify, all the different streaming platforms, and YouTube. And Rebecca's son, Ravi, who is almost 14, created an animated video for every song, which are just
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so it's
Oh
just
my
this
gosh.
little project that kind of keeps growing. And it's honestly, it is really a labor of love and an offering of
Yes.
heart to
Yes.
anybody who feels that they just need a little bit of extra support right now.
I love it. I love it. All right, we're going to get all those links to all those different pieces and make sure we put them in the show notes so everyone can access.
They're all on that one website. It's all
Okay,
right there
great.
for you. Yeah.
Okay, great. Oh, that's amazing. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. I am so excited for you and this work, and I can't wait now. My head's buzzing, thinking, okay, how do we support you? How do we get the word out? How do we make sure folks know about this? Because I can't imagine anyone would imagine, like I did, that it's free. I
Yeah,
mean,
so
there's
great.
just that's it. You have to take advantage. So I'm
Yeah,
so excited, and we'll make mention too of your orientations. I think that's a really great way because it's nothing quite like coming to community, right? Because that's your whole mission, right? Coming together and seeing it in real practice, right? So
absolutely.
yeah, thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for sharing. I wish you the bestest of luck, and can't wait to see how this project unfolds.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be with you and share with your community. And I just hope everybody continues to engage with kids' yoga stories and all that you
Oh, thank
have to
you.
offer and these trainings and just stay connected because this is a beautiful space to be in.
Thank you, Abby.